The massive chamber fell silent as High Chancellor Vextar raised his crystalline hand. 12 alien species sat in judgment, their eyes fixed on the small group of humans standing in the center of the room. The air felt heavy with tension as Ambassador Jake Morrison straightened his shoulders and waited for the words that would change everything. After 3 days of deliberation, the Galactic Council has reached its decision, Vextar announced, his voice echoing through the crystal. Dome above. His species, the Geltari, were beings of living crystal who spoke in musical tones that somehow always sounded cold when delivering bad news. Dr. Lisa Hamilton stood beside Jake, her hands clasped behind her back. She had served as Earth's chief scientist for over 20 years, but today she felt powerless. Behind them, Captain Ryan Douglas of the Earth Defense Force watched from the gallery, his jaw clenched tight. He had fought in the wars that brought them to this moment, and he knew what was coming. The charges against humanity were serious. The Council claimed humans were too violent, too unpredictable. They pointed to the Kepler conflict, where human forces had destroyed 3 contested mining worlds rather than let them fall into enemy hands. They called it barbaric. Humans called it necessary. The human species has shown a consistent pattern of aggression that threatens galactic peace, Vextar continued. Your military tactics violate every principle of civilized warfare. Your refusal to follow Council law makes you a danger to all peaceful species. Jake wanted to argue, to explain that humans had only defended themselves when attacked. But the trial was over. The speeches had been made. The evidence had been presented. Now came the punishment. Admiral Kethvar of the Draknari, a reptilian species known for their own warrior culture, leaned forward. Even he looked uncomfortable with what was about to happen. The Council has decided that humanity cannot coexist with the other species of this galaxy. You are too different, too dangerous. Dr. Hamilton felt her heart sink. She had spent her life studying other species, learning their languages, understanding their cultures. She had believed that knowledge could bridge any gap. But fear, it seemed, was stronger than understanding. Therefore, Vextar's voice rang out like breaking glass. Humanity is hereby exiled from Council space. All human colonies within our borders must be evacuated within 1 standard year. Any human found in Council territory after that time will be considered an act of war. The chamber erupted in whispers and clicks and hisses as the various alien species reacted to the decision. Some seemed pleased. Others looked worried. The Yserian ambassador, a peaceful species that had often supported humanity, lowered her head in what humans had learned was their expression of sadness. Jake Morrison had been a diplomat for 15 years. He had negotiated trade deals, prevented small wars, and built friendships across the galaxy. Now all of that was gone. He looked up at the Council members, these beings he had once considered allies, and felt something cold settle in his chest. You're making a mistake, Dr. Hamilton said, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. Humanity has always been at its strongest when we have nothing left to lose. Her words sent a chill through the room. Some of the Council members shifted nervously. They remembered human history, the stories of how humans fought when their backs were against the wall, but the decision was made. Fear had won over wisdom. Captain Douglas stood up in the gallery. He saluted the human delegation, then turned and walked out. He had a fleet to prepare and a species to save. There would be time for anger later. Right now, there was work to do. The evacuation began immediately. Admiral Kate Sullivan, commander of the human colonial fleet, received her orders within hours. She was to oversee the largest movement of people in human history. 37 colonies scattered across Council space, home to over 50 million humans, all had to be moved to the unknown regions beyond the outer rim. a council gave humanity 1 year, but Kate knew it would take at least 2 years to move everyone safely. She also knew the council would not wait. They wanted humans gone, and they wanted it done quickly. Ben Carter worked 18-hour days in the shipyards above Earth's moon. As the lead engineer for the evacuation fleet, he was responsible for modifying cargo ships to carry people instead of goods. Every ship had to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Every design had to account for the possibility that they might never find another friendly port. "We need ships that can build ships," Ben told his team during one of their late-night planning sessions. "We need to be completely self-sufficient. Once we're out there, we're on our own." His assistant, Rita Hayes, looked up from her calculations. She was young, barely out of engineering school, but she had ideas that impressed even Ben. "What about quantum tunneling drives? We could build ships that can appear anywhere in the galaxy." Ben nodded slowly. It was dangerous technology, barely tested, but it might be their only advantage in the years to come. Start working on it. We're going to need every edge we can get. On the colony world of New Geneva, families packed their belongings and tried to explain to their children why they had to leave the only home they had ever known. Tony Martinez, a mechanic who had spent his whole life fixing farming equipment, now found himself learning how to maintain spaceship engines. His sister Lara had chosen to stay in council space, going underground with other humans who refused to leave. "Promise me you'll be careful," Tony said as he hugged his sister goodbye at the spaceport. "Promise me you'll remember us," Lara replied. "Don't let them make you forget that this was our home, too." The first ships began leaving council space 6 months after the trial. They carried not just people, but everything humans would need to rebuild civilization from scratch. Seeds and genetic samples, manufacturing equipment, computers filled with all of human knowledge, and weapons. Lots of weapons. Dr. Hamilton stood on the bridge of the transport. Ship New Dawn as it prepared to leave Earth's solar system for the last time. She watched through the view screen as the blue and green world grew smaller and smaller. Earth would remain in council space, protected by ancient treaties, but empty of human life. "Where are we going?" asked a young girl who had come to stand beside her. Dr. Hamilton knelt down to the child's level. "Somewhere new," she said gently. "Somewhere we can be free. Will we ever come back?" The old scientist looked out at the stars and thought about Vextar's words, about the fear in the council's eyes, about the way Captain Douglas had saluted before walking away. She thought about human history, about all the times her species had been written off as finished, only to come back stronger than ever. "Maybe," she said finally. "But when we do, we'll be different, and so will they." The great exodus continued. For months, ship after ship left council space, carrying humanity into the unknown. They left behind homes, friends, and dreams of peaceful coexistence. But they also left behind the limitations that council law had placed on human innovation and growth. Admiral Sullivan's final message to Earth was simple and direct. Evacuation complete. All humans safely beyond council borders. We go now into the dark, but we do not go quietly. History will remember this day, and history will judge who was right. High Chancellor Vextar received the message in his crystal palace on the Jeltari homeworld. He felt a moment of doubt, a whisper of fear about what humanity might become in exile. But the decision was made. The galaxy was safer without them. He was wrong about that. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. But it would be 50 years before he realized his mistake, and by then it would be far too late to take it back. The age of human exile had begun. The age of human vengeance was yet to come. 50 years had passed since the Great Exile, and New Haven looked nothing like the barren rock that the first human ships had found in the outer darkness. Director Steve Walsh stood on the observation deck of the central tower, watching construction. Crews work on the newest district of the city. Where once there had been only dust and stone, now gleaming buildings reached toward an alien sky. The early years had been brutal. Steve remembered them well, even though he had been just a child when his family arrived on the transport ship Freedom's Call. His father had died in the first winter, along with thousands of others, as humans struggled to adapt to a world that seemed determined to kill them. The air was thin, the soil was poison, and the weather changed without warning. But humans were stubborn. They learned to breathe the thin air and filter the toxic soil. They built underground shelters when the storms came and created new farming methods that worked in alien dirt. Most importantly, they stopped thinking like colonists and started thinking like survivors. Dr. Amy Foster had been the key to their survival. Her research lab, built into the side of a mountain, had produced breakthrough after breakthrough. She developed the atmospheric processors that made the air breathable, the soil treatment systems that made farming possible, and the genetic modifications that helped humans adapt to their new world. "We're not trying to make this planet like Earth," she had told the early settlers. "We're trying to make ourselves better than we were on Earth." Commander Nick Torres had taken that philosophy and applied it to the military. The old Earth Defense Force was gone, replaced by something new and dangerous. His soldiers trained in the harsh wilderness beyond the city, learning to fight in environments that would kill most other species. They developed new tactics based on speed, stealth, and the ability to appear where enemies least expected them. The humans had also learned to hide. New Haven was invisible to most sensors, protected by technology that Ben Carter had developed. In the early days of exile, ships could pass within a few thousand kilometers and never know that millions of humans lived and worked below them, but they were not completely cut off from the outside galaxy. Tony Martinez received regular messages from his sister Lavra, who had built an underground network of humans still living in Council space. Her latest message had been troubling. "The Council is scared," Laura's recorded voice said as Tony played. The message in his workshop: "Something's happening in the deep core, beyond the Vorthic territories. Ships are disappearing. Whole star systems are going dark." Tony paused his work on the quantum drive components that Rita Hayes had designed. Rita was Ben Carter's former student, and she had taken his theories about faster-than-light travel and made them reality. Her ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours, a capability that no Council species possessed. "They're calling it the Great Silence," Laura's message continued. "But the Vorthic aren't silent. They're moving, fast, and they're heading toward Council space." Tony had heard of the Vorthic hive. Every human had. They were the nightmare that lived beyond the edge of known space, a species of bioengineered killers that consumed everything in their path. The Council had always assumed they were too far away to be a threat. That assumption was about to prove deadly wrong. On the scientific research station orbiting New Haven's smaller moon, Dr. Jenny Clark monitored deep space communications. Her job was to listen to the galaxy's radio chatter and piece together what was happening in Council space. What she heard lately had been keeping her awake at night, that the transmissions were fragmentary and often coded, but the pattern was clear. Systems were going dark along the galactic core, one after another. The last messages from those systems were always the same: requests for help that were cut off mid-transmission. Jenny's analysis showed the Vorthic were not expanding randomly. They were following trade routes, hitting the most populated systems. First, they were organized, intelligent, and absolutely ruthless. The Council's military forces were falling back toward their core worlds, but they were not retreating fast enough. General Paul Baker reviewed the intelligence reports in his underground command center. As the head of New Haven's military, he had been preparing for this day for 50 years. Not specifically for the Vorthik, but for the moment when humanity would be called upon to save the galaxy that had exiled them. His forces were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 50 years of training in impossible conditions had created soldiers who could survive anywhere and fight anyone. They used weapons that Council species had never imagined, tactics that conventional military doctrine said were impossible. Most importantly, they had no fear of death. They had already lost everything once. Being exiled had taught them that there were worse things than dying. Being forgotten was one of them. President Karen Young called an emergency session of the Human Council. The elected leaders of every human settlement gathered in New Haven's council chamber, their faces grim as they discussed the approaching crisis. The Vorthik will not stop at council borders, Karen said, addressing the assembly. If they consume council space, they will eventually find us. This is not about helping those who exiled us. This is about survival. The debate that followed was intense. Some argued that humanity owed the council nothing. Others pointed out that 50 years of isolation had made humans strong, but not strong enough to fight an entire galaxy-consuming hive mind alone. Dr. Hamilton, now elderly, but still sharp, stood to address the council. She had become something of a living legend among the exiled humans, the woman who had predicted that exile would make humanity stronger. "We have a choice," she said, her voice carrying easily through the chamber. "We can wait for the Vorthik to find us and die as an unknown species on a forgotten world. Or we can return to council space and remind the galaxy why they feared us in the first place." The vote was unanimous. If the council asked for help, humanity would provide it. But they would do so on human terms. Rita Hayes worked around the clock to prepare the fleet. Her quantum tunneling drives would allow human ships to strike anywhere in the galaxy without warning. The Council's enemies would face something they had never encountered, an opponent who could be everywhere at once. Commander Torres trained his soldiers for urban warfare on alien worlds. They practiced fighting in zero-gravity, toxic atmospheres and underwater environments. No matter where the Vorthik struck, humans would be ready to strike back. Dr. Foster's final breakthrough came just as the crisis reached its peak. She had discovered that the Vorthik bioships had a fatal weakness. They could not adapt to weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Human quantum technology could exploit this weakness in ways that conventional Council weapons could not. The first official contact between humans and the Council in 50 years came through Laura Martinez's underground network. A desperate message from High Chancellor Vextar, transmitted through 7 layers of secret channels, finally reached Director Walsh's office. "The hive has broken through our outer defenses," the message said. 17 systems have fallen in 6 months. Our military estimates we have less than 2 years before they reach the core worlds. We need help. We need humanity. Steve Walsh read the message 3 times before responding. His reply was short and direct. "Send an official representative to New Haven. We will discuss terms." The response came within hours. Ambassador Kelthara of the Assyrian would arrive within the week. She was one of the few council members who had opposed humanity's exile 50 years earlier. As Steve prepared for the meeting that would change everything, he thought about the irony of the situation. The Council had exiled humanity to protect galactic civilization from human violence. Now they needed that same violence to save galactic civilization from something much worse. Outside his window, human ships prepared for war. They were sleek, deadly vessels that bore no resemblance to the clumsy evacuation transports that had brought humanity to this world. 50 years of exile had transformed humanity from refugees into something far more dangerous. The galaxy's last hope. The Vorthik were about to learn what the Council had forgotten. Humanity was not the species you exile when you want peace. Humanity was the species you call when you need war. The Geltari crystal cities were dying. High Chancellor Vextar watched from his palace windows as the evacuation ships lifted off, carrying thousands of his people toward the inner core worlds. The bioships of the Vorthic hive had consumed 17 star systems in just 6 months, and they showed no signs of slowing down. Admiral Kethvar's final report lay on Vextar's desk, the pages marked with the blood-red seal of military disaster. The Draknari admiral had been the Council's finest military commander, leading fleets that had kept peace in the galaxy for over a century. Now he was dead, his flagship consumed along with 3 entire battle groups at the Ragil defense line. Report made for grim reading. The Vorthic bioships were unlike anything the Council had ever faced. They absorbed energy weapons, adapted to projectile fire, and seemed to learn from every battle. Worse, they fought without fear, without hesitation, and without mercy. They simply consumed everything in their path and moved on to the next target. They fight like machines, Admiral Kethvar had written in his final transmission, but they think like predators. They're not just invading our space, they're hunting us. Ambassador Kelthara of the Ysarian stood in the council chamber, her blue skin pale with exhaustion. She had just returned from New Haven, and the news she brought was not what the council wanted to hear. The humans will help us, she announced to the assembled representatives, but they have conditions. The chamber erupted in angry clicks and hisses. Several council members demanded to know how the exiled humans dared to make demands. Others argued that humanity should be grateful for the chance to redeem themselves. What do they want? Asked Admiral Zexra, the new military commander who had replaced the fallen Kethvar. She was younger than her predecessor, but her species, the aquatic Nerian, had a reputation for tactical brilliance. Kalthara consulted her notes. Complete. Autonomy for human space. The right to settle any unclaimed worlds. Recognition that the exile was unjust. And full authority over their own military operations. The demands sent shockwaves through the council. 50 years ago, they had exiled humanity to prevent them from gaining too much power. Now they were being asked to give humans even more power than they had possessed before. Unacceptable, declared Chancellor Mordith of the Klaxon Empire. His insect-like species controlled 12 systems and had always been suspicious of human expansion. We cannot reward their defiance. Then we die, Kelthara said simply. I saw their ships, their weapons, their soldiers. They have capabilities we never imagined. If we refuse their help, the hive will consume us all. On New Haven, President Karen Young met with her military advisors in the war room deep beneath the planet's surface. The chamber was filled with holographic displays showing the advance of the Vorthic hive. Red markers indicated consumed systems, while yellow ones showed worlds under attack. General Paul Baker pointed to the tactical display. They're following the major trade routes, but not randomly. Look at this pattern. They're targeting the most heavily defended systems first. Dr. Amy Foster, now serving as the chief science advisor, nodded grimly. They're eliminating resistance. Every system they take makes them stronger and the council weaker. Commander Nick Torres leaned over the display, studying the hive's movements. They're not just conquering, they're testing. Each battle teaches them something new about council tactics. Rita Hayes had spent weeks analyzing intercepted transmissions from the war zone. Her quantum communication arrays could monitor council military channels from across the galaxy. What she heard painted a picture of complete military collapse. The council fleets are falling back to their core worlds, she reported, but they're not retreating in good order. They're running. The hive has broken their will to fight. President Young studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. The Council military had been a powerful force when humanity was exiled. To see them collapse so completely suggested that the Vorthik were more dangerous than anyone had. Imagine. Meanwhile, in the abandoned sectors near the Galactic Rim, Tony Martinez worked on a secret project. His sister Lavra had managed to smuggle him detailed scans of destroyed Vorthik bioships, and what he found in the wreckage was disturbing. The bioships were not grown randomly. They showed signs of intelligent design, as if someone or something was directing their evolution. Even more troubling, the newer ships showed adaptations specifically designed to counter Council weapons. The hive was learning and adapting faster than anyone had realized. Dr. Jenny Clark's Deep Space Monitoring Station had detected something that made her blood run cold. Beyond the advancing hive fleets, her sensors picked up massive energy signatures moving through space. Whatever had driven the Vorthik from the galactic core was still out there, and it was following them. "They're not invading," she told Director Steve Walsh during an emergency briefing. "They're fleeing. Something in the deep core scared them so badly that they're willing to fight the entire galaxy just to get away from it." The revelation changed everything. If the Vorthik were refugees running from something even worse, then defeating them might only delay the real threat. On the Asarian homeworld, Ambassador Kelthara received another message from the human underground network. Lavra Martinez had managed to infiltrate a Council military briefing, and the intelligence she provided was shocking. The Council was considering the use of planet killer weapons against the hive. They were so desperate that they were willing to destroy their own worlds rather than let them fall to the bioships. The plan would kill billions of Council citizens, but the military commanders believed it was their only option. Back on New Haven, the human leadership debated their response to the Council's growing desperation. Some argued that humanity should wait for the Council to exhaust itself fighting the hive, then emerge to claim the ruins of galactic civilization. Dr. Hamilton, despite her advanced age, remained the voice of human conscience. "We are not scavengers," she told the assembled leaders. "If we help only to profit from the Council's weakness, we become the monsters they said we were." General Baker had been studying the hive's biotechnology with growing fascination. Human quantum weapons might be effective against traditional bioships, but the hive was evolving rapidly. Each destroyed ship provided genetic material for the next generation, making them stronger and more adaptable. "We need to hit them fast and hard," he told President Young. "If we give them time to adapt to our weapons, we'll lose our only advantage." Commander Torres was already preparing his forces for deployment. The soldiers of New Haven had trained for 50 years in impossible conditions. They were ready for war against an enemy that had never faced human tactics. Rita Hayes completed the final modifications to the human fleet. Her quantum tunneling drives would allow human ships to appear anywhere in Council space within hours. The Vorthik would face an enemy that could strike from multiple directions simultaneously. The decision came suddenly. A desperate transmission from the Elathi Empire announced that their sun cities were under attack. The energy-manipulating species that had once scorned human primitive technology were begging for help against bioships that absorbed their most powerful weapons. President Young gave the order that would change the course of galactic history. "Prepare the fleet. Send word to the Council. Humanity is coming home." As human ships powered up their quantum drives and prepared for the journey back to Council space, High Chancellor Vextar received the message he had been dreading and hoping for in equal measure. "The Terran Intervention Force is en route to Council space," the transmission announced. "We will arrive at the coordinates you provide within 72 hours. Prepare your forces to follow human tactical command." Vextar's crystalline hands shook as he read the message. 50 years ago, he had voted to exile humanity because they were too dangerous to coexist with civilized species. Now that same danger was humanity's gift to a galaxy that had run out of hope. Exiles were coming home, and they were bringing war with them. The Vorthic Hive Queen floated in the bioneural chamber at the heart of her massive flagship, her consciousness connected to trillions of bioships spread across the galaxy. She was ancient beyond measure, a creature of pure malevolence that had consumed countless worlds in her flight from the darkness at the galactic core. Through the eyes of her warrior forms, she watched the crystal cities of the Sheltari burn. The energy beings had tried to hide in their sun forges, but her bioships had learned to absorb stellar radiation. Nothing the Council species possessed could stop her advance toward the core worlds. Yet, something troubled the Hive Queen. Reports from her scout forms spoke of ships that moved strangely, appearing and disappearing without warning. The genetic memories of her consumed enemies contained no reference to such technology. A new player had entered the game. High Chancellor Vexstar stood in the ruins of what had once been the Council's proudest military academy. The Alathi Sun cities were gone, consumed by bioships that had somehow learned to feed on pure energy. The aquatic Nerian had lost 3 of their oceanic worlds to creatures that could survive in the crushing depths of alien seas. Ambassador Kelthara approached him across the rubble-strewn courtyard. Her usually calm demeanor was cracked with exhaustion and fear. "The human fleet has arrived at the Centauri staging area," she reported. "They're requesting permission to dock at Council Station Alpha." Vexstar felt his crystalline body vibrate with barely controlled emotion. Council Station Alpha was the military headquarters of the Galactic Alliance, a symbol of council power that had stood for 3,000 years. Now they were inviting their former enemies to its command centers. "How many ships?" he asked. 47 vessels. "But Chancellor, these are not the ships we remember. Our sensors can barely detect them. They seem to exist partially outside normal spacetime." The journey to Council Station Alpha was a humbling experience for the old Chancellor. The station itself bore the scars of recent hive attacks, its outer rings blackened and twisted by bioacid. Emergency repair crews worked around the clock to keep the massive structure operational. President Karen Young arrived aboard the flagship New Destiny, a sleek vessel that seemed to shimmer between dimensions. She was older now, her hair white and her face lined with the responsibilities of leading a species in permanent exile. But her eyes held the same determination that had driven humanity to survive 50 years in the wilderness. The meeting took place in the Council's formal diplomatic chamber, a room designed to impress visitors with the majesty of galactic civilization. But the empty seats where representatives of destroyed species should have sat told a different story. The Hive had already claimed a terrible toll. 50 years ago, you exiled us from this chamber, President Young said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. You called us too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. Now you invite us back because you need that danger. Dr. Lisa Hamilton, now ancient but still sharp, served as humanity's chief negotiator. She had been present at the original exile, and the irony of her current position was not lost on her. The Council offers full reinstatement, territorial concessions, and reparations in exchange for military assistance against the Vorthic Hive. What we offer, Vexstar replied, his voice tight with barely controlled desperation, is the chance for humanity to prove that our fears were unfounded. Help us defeat this threat, and we will welcome you back as equal partners. President Young's laugh was cold and bitter. Equal partners? You exiled us when you thought we were a threat to galactic peace. Now you want us back because we're a threat to your enemies. The hypocrisy is breathtaking. The negotiations continued for hours, with both sides fully aware that time was running out. Intelligence reports showed the Hive advancing on multiple fronts, their bioships adapting to every weapon the Council threw at them. Soon, the core worlds themselves would be under direct attack. General Paul Baker reviewed the tactical situation. From the war room aboard the New Destiny, the Hive's strategy was becoming clear. They were not just conquering territory. They were systematically destroying the Council's ability to resist. Each fallen world provided genetic material for new bioforms, while eliminating potential bases for counterattack. They're not just smart, he told his staff. They're learning from our enemies' mistakes. Every battle makes them stronger. Commander Nick Torres had been studying intercepted Hive communications, trying to understand their command structure. What he found was disturbing. The bioships were not individual creatures, but extensions of a single vast intelligence. Destroying individual ships was like cutting off fingers. It slowed the enemy, but did not stop them. "We need to find the brain," he reported. "Kill the Hive Queen, and the rest should collapse." Dr. Amy Foster had been analyzing samples of Hive biomatter obtained from battlefield wrecks. Her findings revolutionized human understanding of their enemy. The bioships were not naturally evolved creatures, but engineered weapons, designed by an intelligence that understood both biology and technology at a level that surpassed even human science. "They're running from something," she told the assembled command staff. "These creatures were created as weapons, but they're being used as tools of evacuation. The real question is, what are they evacuating from?" Meanwhile, Laura Martinez continued to operate her underground network within Council space. Her latest intelligence was the most disturbing yet. The Council military was planning to use planet-killer weapons against their own worlds, hoping to create a firebreak that would stop the Hive's advance. "They're willing to destroy everything rather than let it fall to the Hive," she reported to her brother Tony. "Billions of their own people will die, but they see no other option." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Rita Hayes, analyzing quantum signatures from destroyed Hive ships, discovered that the bioforms existed partially in normal space and partially in what humans called quantum foam, the underlying structure of reality itself. This dual existence made them nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. But quantum weapons work in the same dimensional space, she explained to the gathered scientists. "We can hit them where they exist, not where they appear to exist." The first test came sooner than expected. A Hive scout fleet attacked the research station where Dr. Jenny Clark had been monitoring deep space communications. The station's automated defenses were quickly overwhelmed, but a single human patrol ship was in the area. Commander Lisa Stone led the patrol vessel, defiant into battle against 3 Hive bioships. Her crew had trained for this moment for years. But facing the enemy in real combat was different from any simulation. The bioships moved like living things, twisting and turning in ways that no mechanical vessel could match. "Target their quantum signatures," Stone ordered. "Hit them where they really are, not where they appear to be." The human quantum weapons struck the bioships like lightning, tearing through their adaptive armor as if it were paper. For the first time in the war, Hive bioforms were destroyed quickly and completely, leaving no genetic material for the enemy to learn from. The victory was small, but significant. It proved that human weapons could kill Hive bioforms, something that no Council weapon had been able to do. More importantly, it showed that the Hive was not invincible. Admiral Zexra of the Nerian watched the battle recordings with amazement. Her people were master tacticians, but they had never seen anything like human combat doctrine. The humans fought like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks with inhuman precision. "How do they do it?" she asked Ambassador Kelthara. "How do they fight as if they share a single mind?" Kelthara had spent months on New Haven, studying human society. "They don't share a mind," she replied. "They share a purpose." 50 years of exile taught them that survival requires absolute cooperation. The negotiations finally reached their conclusion. The Council would grant humanity's demands in exchange for military assistance against the hive. It was a bitter pill for the proud alien species to swallow, but the alternative was extinction. President Young signed the agreement with mixed emotions. Humanity was returning to galactic civilization, but at a terrible cost. The galaxy they were rejoining was dying, consumed by an enemy that seemed unstoppable. "We'll help you fight the hive," she told the assembled council members. "But understand, we're not doing it to save you. We're doing it to save the galaxy. And when this is over, things will never be the same." High Chancellor Vextar watched the human fleet prepare for battle, their strange ships flickering in and out of normal space. 50 years ago, he had feared what humanity might become if left unchecked. Now he feared what the galaxy would become if humanity failed to save it. The price of pride was about to be paid in full. The Terran Intervention Force emerged from quantum space like ghosts materializing from the void. Admiral Chris Watson stood on the bridge of the flagship Redemption, watching as 47 human vessels took position around the besieged Altair. System. The Vorthic hive had turned the system into a breeding ground, its bioships feeding on the debris of destroyed worlds. "All ships report ready," announced Commander Lisa Stone from her position at the tactical station. Her successful test against the hive scouts had earned her a place in the main fleet, and she felt the weight of that responsibility. The Council fleets hung back at a safe distance, their commanders uncertain how to coordinate with the strange human vessels. Admiral Zexra of the Nerian watched through her sensors as the human ships seemed to flicker between dimensions, appearing solid one moment and translucent the next. "How do we fight alongside ships we cannot predict?" she asked her tactical officer. "We don't," came the reply from Admiral Watson over the communication channel. "You watch. We fight. Try to keep up." The first engagement began without warning. The human ships suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, diving into the heart of the hive formation like a pack of wolves attacking a herd. But instead of massive ship-to-ship combat, thousands of small craft poured from the human vessels, each one moving with deadly precision. Commander Nick Torres led Squadron Alpha through the bioship formation, his pilots following attack patterns that seemed to defy physics. The human fighters moved like they shared a single mind, coordinating attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Target the quantum signatures," Torres ordered his wing. "Remember, they exist in both normal space and quantum foam. Hit them where they really are." The human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of energy beams or projectiles, they fired concentrated bursts of quantum energy that tore through the bioship's adaptive armor like it was paper. The hive creatures, evolved to counter conventional weapons, had no defense against attacks. That bypassed normal space entirely. The Vorthic bioships tried to adapt, their genetic programming searching for a response to this new threat. But human tactics changed faster than the hive could evolve. Each attack came from a different angle, using different weapons, following different patterns. General Paul Baker coordinated the ground assault on the hive's breeding facilities. His soldiers deployed from quantum tunneling pods that appeared directly inside the biostructures, bypassing all external defenses. Colonel Andy Griffin led the first wave into the heart of a massive bioship, his troops fighting through corridors of living flesh and bone. The environment would have killed most species, but 50 years of training on hostile worlds had prepared humans for anything. "These creatures think like a hive mind," Griffin reported as his team cleared another section. "They can't understand individual initiative. Use that against them." The battle raged for 6 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Vorthic bioships, invincible against Council weapons, fell like leaves before the human assault. When the last bioform was destroyed, The Altair system was free for the first time in months, but the real breakthrough came from Dr. Amy Foster's research. Working with samples of destroyed bioships, she had developed something that would change the course of the war, a quantum virus that could spread through the hive's bioneural networks. Their greatest strength is their connection, she explained to the assembled commanders. They share information instantly across the entire hive, but that also makes them vulnerable to attacks that spread through their communication system. Virus was deployed at the Battle of Proxima Centauri, when the hive had massed their largest fleet. As human ships engaged the bioforms in conventional combat, Rita Hayes released the quantum virus from a specially modified probe. The effect was immediate and devastating. The virus spread through the hive's collective consciousness like wildfire, corrupting their bioneural networks and turning their shared intelligence against itself. Bioships that had fought as a unified force suddenly began attacking each other, their programming confused and corrupted. The Vorthic Hive Queen felt the virus tearing through her consciousness like acid. For the first time in eons, she experienced something she had never known: fear. These humans were not like the council species. They fought with a creativity and unpredictability that her ancient mind could not comprehend. What manner of beings are these? She transmitted to her remaining bioforms. They attacked the very essence of thought itself. The answer came from the genetic memories of consumed council worlds. Humans were the species the council had exiled for being too dangerous. They were the warriors who fought without fear, who turned every disadvantage into a weapon, who grew stronger with each defeat. The Hive Queen's final transmission echoed across the galaxy as her bioneural networks collapsed. The Devourers are coming. We were merely the first to flee. These humans, they may be the only ones who can stop what follows us. With those words, the Vorthic Hive died. Bioships across the galaxy simply stopped functioning, their controlling intelligence destroyed by humanity's quantum virus. The threat that had consumed 17 star systems and brought the Council to its knees was ended in a matter of hours. The celebration in Council space was short-lived. Dr. Jenny Clark's deep space monitoring stations detected massive energy, signatures moving through the galactic core, following the path the Vorthic had taken. Whatever had driven the hive from their home was still coming. President Karen Young addressed the reformed Galactic Council from the chambers on New Haven. The Council had agreed to meet on the human world, acknowledging humanity's role in saving galactic civilization. "You exiled us to protect your civilization from our violence," she said, her words carried to every world in Council space. "Instead, you created the warriors who would save your civilization with our violence. The price of that irony is a debt you can never repay." High Chancellor Vextar, humbled by recent events, responded with words that marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. "We feared your strength when we should have embraced it. We sought peace by removing those who could protect it. We were fools, and our foolishness nearly cost us everything." The new galactic order was very different from the old one. Humans established colonies throughout the former hive territories, their settlements serving as early warning stations against future threats. The council races learned to respect, if not always understand, their former exiles. Admiral Watson's fleet patrolled the outer rim, their quantum ships standing ready to face whatever emerged from the galactic core. His final log entry reflected the new reality. The galaxy is safe for now, but safety is temporary. Vigilance is eternal. 5 years after the Hive War, the first signs of the new threat appeared. Deep space sensors detected something approaching from the galactic core, something that made space itself seem to scream. The Devourers the Hive Queen had warned about were finally coming, but this time the galaxy was ready. Human technology had been shared with willing council species, creating new weapons and defenses. More importantly, the The spirit of human resistance had spread throughout galactic civilization. Commander Stone, now an admiral herself, stood on the bridge of the newest human flagship, watching the sensor readings with calm determination. Whatever's coming next, she told her crew. They're about to learn what the Vorthik learned too late. Humanity is not the species you exile when you want peace. We're the species you pray is on your side when the real monsters show up. Tony Martinez received a final message from his sister Laura, now serving as humanity's ambassador to the inner worlds. The galaxy understands now. We're not the monsters they feared. We're the monsters their real enemies should fear. The age of human exile was over. The age of human guardianship had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between the stars, ancient evils that had slumbered. Since the galaxy's youth were about to discover why the Council had been right to fear humanity's potential, they had just been wrong about who humanity would use that potential against.